What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another live broadcast of the Engadget Podcast. I'm Senior Editor Devindra Hardwar. This morning, I'm joined by Senior Editor Carissa Bell. Hey, Carissa.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
Happy to have you. I always love seeing your setup, Carissa, because clearly you're like in Pee-wee's Playhouse or something. It's great. It's lovely. Actually, it's exactly the chair. It's the chair that moves and talks. Love it. And podcast producer Ben Ellman. Hey, Ben.
Good morning. We're going to be
Good
talking
morning.
about other news.
Other news and so much stuff. Thank you all for joining us. Sherlyn is out this week. I think she's pretty much prepping to go to Google and deal with a bunch of stuff around that. But we're going to be talking about the Google monopoly judgment that came down this week. And a whole bunch of other stuff. I know you have thoughts on X suing its advertisers. We've got a couple actual gadgets here. So Chris is only joining us for the first part, but will be a fun time. How are you doing, Chrissa?
I'm doing good. I'm it's early, but I'm happy to be here.
Happy to be here. Happy to have you. It's tough, folks. Thank you, viewers, for joining us. Dude named Charlie, George Morgan. Who else is here? Broccoli, Brit Singles. It's a podcast. Hello, Mark Dell. It's tough because Ben and I are on the East Coast, and we're on East Coast timing, so it's really tough to get our West Coast friends in. But we try. Thank you so much, Carissa, for coming up early.
I do my best.
Mark Dell asks, is Carissa tiny, or did she steal the chair from a dog?
Oh, yeah. We were literally just talking about this.
Yes, I live with an actual giant, so.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but hey, you got a lot of gear here. Thank you so much for joining us, Carissa. Ben, how are you doing? I have not talked with you in a while.
Oh, I'm doing just fine. It's very, very sweaty weather in New York recently. The heat actually just broke. I think that there might be some kind of like the remnants of a tropical storm system moving through. That's the great thing about the Northeast, like New York area. When we do get hurricanes, they're a terrible, terrible problem, like Superstorm Sandy. But usually it's Florida and
Georgia,
like the Gulf Coast,
and the Gulf,
break up all those hurricanes and stuff for us. We just get big rain events.
It was like where I vacation around Savannah, like they got hit real hard, like everywhere along the coast in Georgia. But yeah, well, I'm glad it's not too bad for you, Ben. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Chat, how are you guys doing?
Yeah, hey there, Kevin says. Hey there, Bert Singles. Everybody tell us where you're tuning in from, because that's always fun.
Always fun. Mark Dell says he thinks he's sitting next to the chair in Chris's background. That is very common. Is that like an Office Depot or Staples chair? Like, I feel like I've seen that chair all over.
Yeah, why?
Everyone has that chair.
I think that one's an Aeron.
Okay. It's just like a nice one. It's not a copycat Staples chair.
No, but it's an old one. It's pretty beat up, actually, if you look at it closely.
I mean, I still think that those chairs, the Aeron, like the thing in the background, is probably more comfortable than the like gamer chair that you're currently sitting in. I don't know how like marketers got people to just like be happy about sitting in the chairs that are
you want to be a racer
in like like F1 cars or something,
which are not known to be comfortable. They're known to be there to support you as you're going very fast. But okay. All right. Sorry we started a little late, folks. We were juggling some tech issues. We're going to get right into the podcast. If this is your first time, we're recording our audio show. We won't really get to chat with you all so much, but we'll do some breaks in between it and then do some Q&A there. And Carissa will drop after a few segments too. So you'll be stuck with me and Ben. We'll have some fun news chat. I think we'll have a good time. All right. Double checking recordings. Levels look good. Hello. Everything's good. Okay. Let's get the show notes up. And Ben, I will intro you right at the beginning too. I assume you're recording and doing everything right on your end.
Yes, I'm recording, doing everything. Let me just turn on the backup recording as well.
Thank you. All right, strap in, chat, and then we'll do the countdown whenever you're ready, Ben.
Yes. Mark Dell says that he's in Bora Bora, but that does not count if you're just saying that it's a Vision Pro environment.
It's a pretty good Vision Pro environment. Mark Dell, I wish I could live there, because it is like realistic enough where you're like, just tune me out of this world.
But hello to Ian William Clark, who's in Scotland. I'm seeing a lot of the entertainment people I follow on social media. They're all at Edinburgh Fringe right now. So
yeah.
It seems like a really fun summer camp for theater people, if you can stand to hang out with theater people.
It's rough. I had enough in high school, you know. I don't know.
Yeah.
There was always that
Okay.
separation. Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it. Chat, if you have watched us before, you know what's going to happen. If you haven't, we're going to sync. So I'm going to count down from 3. At the end of 3, we're all going to make a sound. You can clap your hands or snap your fingers if you're on the stream, but if you're not on the stream, you can just put a fun clap emoji or like movie set slate emoji in the chat because that's fun. And then we're going to do a little bit of silence. Then we're going to get straight into the show. Remember that we're not going to be able to talk directly to chat through the entire thing because this is also an audio podcast. And I just want to make sure that the audio only people are not totally left out. We might mention some things here and there because I say it every time. Chat makes us smarter. It remembers stuff we forgot. But we're not going to be talking directly to you all the time. We are going to be taking breaks between segments in order to talk directly to chat. So let's get into it. Counting down from 3, 2, 1. And some silence. I'll let you know when the silence is over. Okay, silence over. Let's get into it.
All right. Let's go in 3, 2, 1. What's up, Internet, and welcome back to the Engadget Podcast. I'm Senior Editor Devendra Hardwar. This week, I'm joined by Senior Editor Carissa Bell. Hey, Carissa, how's it going?
Hey, Dev, I'm good.
Thanks for joining us while Sherlyn is out. And also, podcast producer Ben Ellman is going to join us for this episode, too, to go down some news. Hey, Ben.
Hello.
Hello. This week, folks, Google is officially a monopoly, at least according to a U.S. judge, kind of confirming something a lot of people have been saying for a long time, monopoly when it comes to search, at least. So we're going to be diving into that, and also the silly case of X suing advertisers, and we could talk about the video the ex-CEO put up too, which is very much the Succession scene where one of the, I think the assistants, Kari the assistants, tried to be a newscaster. Did not work out so well for her. As always, folks, if you're enjoying the show, please be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice. Leave us a review on iTunes. Drop us an email at podcast@engadget.com. Let's get right into it. And the biggest news this week is that Google is officially a monopolist. There was an antitrust case, antitrust lawsuit that the Department of Justice filed in 2020. And this is the outcome from all of that. There was a 10-week trial in 2023. Here's the quote. It's pretty killer. Google's a monopolist and it has acted as one to maintain its monopoly. It has violated Section 2 of the Sherman Act. And that's according to Judge Amit Mehta of the U.S. District Court of the District of Columbia. Not Meta, the company. We'll be talking about them later. It always gets confusing. I was not too surprised by this ruling. I know this is this is big news because we have not seen an antitrust judgment go down against big tech since like Microsoft in the late 90s, but it also feels like we are in a very different federal regulatory environment. Carissa, what were your thoughts on this news?
I mean, this is like the first major antitrust ruling we've seen since Microsoft in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not surprising, but it also is like a little surprising just because it's Google and it's felt like they were untouchable for so long. And a lot of the behavior that was kind of outlined as, monopolistic and problematic is stuff that's been, it's not like they uncovered some like new secrets that Google was doing, right? This stuff has all been out in the open for a long time. So in that sense, it was a little surprising to kind of, see them finally have something, have someone come after them for that. But yeah, I mean, this is, potentially could be a really big deal for them.
Could be a big deal. We don't know, like, there's no final judgment yet in terms of what, Amit Mehta says, Judge Mehta says will actually happen. But let's go down like a couple of things. The main thing is the lawsuit claimed that Google illegally acted to maintain its dominant position in search by paying Apple and Samsung and Mozilla billions of dollars a year to be the default search engine on their browsers and phones and all their other devices. I'm reading from our Engadget article here, by the way. And the Department of Justice also argued that Google facilitates almost 90% of web searches, and that by paying to be the default option, it prevented rivals from achieving the kind of scale it needed to compete. So that's the main thing here. What's interesting is that Judge Mehta also says that Google is producing a good product, like an excellent product, and likely the best product on the market. But I think the argument is that by doing this, by paying billions of dollars, and there's some really interesting numbers here, Google essentially prevented any other sort of competition from coming about. And I don't know, I guess it's a thing you can just say, but it's also not like there are any really close competitors too. I know Microsoft is happy about this. Satya Nadella was out there talking about like Google's monopoly, and this like puts Bing in a better framing. But also, have you guys used Bing before the Chat GPT stuff? Like, just use Bing as a search engine. It was awful. Like pretty much every other search engine I've tried DuckDuckGo. That's not too bad. There are a couple others, but there aren't really any good alternatives to Google too. So I feel like we're in a really weird place. How you describe this as a monopoly? The Wall Street Journal, of course, came out with an op-ed that was like, "What monopoly?" Because Google's not harming consumers, right? They're calling Google a very strange monopolist because it violates antitrust law, even though it doesn't harm consumers. I guess that's the real argument. Any thoughts around that, like, argument, Carissa?
Yeah, I mean, that's the argument that Google's making. You mentioned Apple before. I don't know if you saw there's a quote that came out in the court documents that was reported. I think it was from Eddie Q, who said he wouldn't use Bing as the default search on iOS if it was free, which was like, so for Microsoft, I feel like it's kind of like win some, lose some.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's also part of it, it wasn't just about the default search engines. There's also, their advertising business was also part of this case as well, that they were artificially inflating prices on their own ads. And I think, you probably have a clear argument there that like that was harming, if not consumers, like people that they do business with.
Yeah, most definitely. And this gets confusing too, because there's a separate suit against Google's overall digital ad business. In this judgment, they're referring specifically to search ads, so the stuff around search results. It is certainly very convenient that Google can just milk money from this thing. That is essentially how it pays for the search and everything. But yeah, Google is basically always helping itself by essentially paying competitors to use the search engine. Then it makes its own money from those ads. There were numbers being thrown around a couple of years ago. Google reportedly paid around $20 billion to Apple in 2021. It was 18 billion then, but people are assuming like around 20 billion now.
And that made up a significant percentage of Apple's total revenue, right?
It did. I mean, Apple's a huge
crazy.
Company. It is crazy that the amount Google can just throw out there. Google also confirmed, so this number was confirmed, that it pays Apple 36% of search ad revenues. Now, it's unclear if that number is also part of this like 20 billion-ish that is paying to Apple, but it pays these companies. It pays companies in a way to team up with Google because they still make some of the ad money down too. The craziest number I saw, and Ben, you pointed this out, and I think like people were not aware of how entrenched Google was in basically in Mozilla's business. But Mozilla apparently, let me see here. According to Mozilla's 2021 and 2022 financial statements, 510 million out of Mozilla's 593 million revenue came from Google search result payments or search payments. That's a lot of money. That is the vast majority of Mozilla's revenue. And Mozilla's a nonprofit, so they're not like a company that's really gearing up to sell a lot of things, but
in fact, I want to read
rough.
something from Mozilla's like financial statements. It said that approximately 81 and 83% of Mozilla's revenues from customers and contracts were derived from one customer for the years ended December 31, 2022 and 2021. And so they're not talking specifically about Google, but Google is that one customer. That's ridiculous. The other number is, did you say 510 million of? Yes. Okay.
We said, so yeah, 510 million out of 593. Go ahead, Carissa.
So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about with this case when you think about these numbers and what a big piece of their business this Google revenue is. That one potential outcome of this case is the judge could say, well, you can't you can no longer pay to be the default.
Mm-hmm.
And then like that would actually probably hurt companies like Apple and Mozilla the most, because then they would lose that revenue, but then people would still probably choose to use Google. So like Google would
Mm-hmm.
still get the ad money anyway.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
not
kind
have
of
to share it with those
yeah.
those companies. I think Google has constructed this just like perfect situation where it will really hurt a lot of these companies. Mozilla in particular, like I remember when I was working in IT, it was always, hey, everybody just use Firefox, right? Firefox is the thing to use. Then Chrome came out when around like 2005-ish, and that started, it was smaller, it was nimbler, it was faster. Firefox just sort of stopped really innovating as much. I honestly have not seen like a major Firefox release or launch or anything like super innovative in the last decade. And I almost wonder, like, if you're being paid such a huge chunk of money from your main browser rival, why would you innovate? Why would you try to get better? Like, it just, that is such a messy conflict of interest.
It's kind of a way of owning a company without
Yes.
owning the company.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and Mozilla, not a for-profit organization. I love Mozilla as a company typically. I have friends who work at Mozilla. Like, it is like the philosophy of Mozilla of open source software and, you know, trying to produce great products without nickel and diming people for it. Or they're also big into privacy now. So that's a good reason to use Firefox compared to everything else, right, Carissa?
Yeah, that's one of their biggest selling points, I think, for people who choose to use Mozilla over Chrome is, you know, a lot of people, it's for privacy reasons. They don't, you know, they don't track as much. They're not as intrusive with advertising. They don't have the same business model, obviously, since they're a nonprofit. And I think, and that's kind of like the thing that they always hammer is that, you know, you know, we care about your privacy and the others don't.
Except we're being paid by the company that's collecting all of your data and also probably still collecting data through those Google searches on Firefox. Dude named Charlie in the chat is pointing out Brave. Yes, Brave, I hear, is a really good privacy-focused one. What was the AI browser that was in the news recently?
Perplexity?
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about Arc.
No, I'm thinking of Arc. Perplexity was something else, right? Wasn't that that's the search engine, or that's not the browser, but Arc was the one that has the weird founder, and then people got really turned off by that whole thing. But really does like it just puts like the entire browser industry and the search industry in perspective here too, because you gotta team up with the browsers if you want to have a dominant search engine. But if you're paying everybody to do it, and if you're essentially paying one of your major browser competitors so much money, like, yeah, they don't have a reason to innovate. So many other browsers are basically based on Chromium now. Microsoft Edge, no longer based on Microsoft stuff. It's a Chromium browser. It can run Chrome extensions and things like that. Yeah, people are pointing out, aren't Firefox and Safari the only Chromium holdouts right now? And I think so. That's the thing. So Google has essentially also taken over the browser world in multiple ways. Even if you're not really running Chrome, you may be running Chromium, which is an open source project, but that they have all their hands in, or they're directly like just paying Mozilla, a nonprofit, so much money. Ben, do you have any other thoughts on this whole situation?
I'm wondering what exactly is actually illegal, because if you were to just argue the other side, you could say that they're saying that it's just not fair that Google has so much money that they can pay,
or that they're so
other
successful
companies.
So
are they suffering from success? That's, I can see an argument where people would be like, oh, well, you know, just get good or something. Like, sounds like a really but the other problem is that if you are so big and you can pay so much money, then how is any other browser or any other search engine supposed to even get a foothold?
So Judge Metis said that Google violated Section 2 of the Sherman Act, which was, I believe, the very first antitrust act from 1890. And the first text of that just says, every person who shall monopolize or attempt to monopolize or combine or conspire with any other person or persons to monopolize any part of the trade or commerce among the several states or foreign nations shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor, and blah blah blah. Then it talks about the punishments, not exceeding $5,000 punishment. I think we're probably going to upgrade that a little at this point. Yeah, for Google. But it's also, we've talked about Lena Khan and the way she has classified antitrust when it comes to like Amazon, right? Similar story there, where it's a company that is delivering consumers low prices typically. And under older definitions of monopoly and antitrust, Amazon technically isn't doing anything wrong, except they're doing it in new ways, and they're using data from competitors to resell products. They're crushing competitors in new ways. So yeah, I think we're going to have to rethink the way we consider a monopoly at this point. It's no wonder the Wall Street Journal is like, what monopoly? This is all great for consumers. It's the best search product, which it technically is, but could it be better? Because right now my Google search results are surrounded by awful ads and sponsored posts up top. So
like
yeah,
the sponsored posts are the top 4, 5, 6 links now.
that's all money for Google. This is not the Google from the 2000s, the early 2000s, late 90s, where it's just like, just give me, just text, super fast search, just text. Yeah.
So another question that I have for Carissa is that I'm surprised that we only brought up Lena Khan like 15 minutes into talking about this or so. So how did this get through the courts, and was this a something that was spearheaded by Lena Khan, or like what was its path?
I don't think this was an FTC thing, so it didn't technically go through them, but yeah. It's okay. Take your time, Krista.
That's why we do editing in post.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold. So, I mean, Lena Khan, that's the thing, like, I think you're saying, like, we need new rules for monopolies, and I think that's kind of what Lena Khan is trying to do right now at the FTC. You know, we've seen them go after, at least like you said, Amazon, Google.
Oh, Carissa, can you stop here? I need to be a producer for a second and say, like, can you just mute yourself and like do a big ugly cough?
Do your
Turn
thing.
your
Do your
chair
thing
around if you need to.
Yep, I will bring up something from the chat here. I think I see Tom Rogers in the chat puts it pretty succinctly. It's the non-competitive activities that violate antitrust. Being big is not a violation, but using your size to limit competition and cornering an entire sector is the violation. That is more clearly related to
I think that's a much smarter point of view. And that's something that kind of the very pro-business people, like, oh, why are you punishing people for being successful, wouldn't really understand, or definitely would not argue from that point of view.
Yeah. But I think Lena Khan is trying to remake the rules for antitrust. You know, she's been going after so many companies. You know, and really, you know, and that's why they've all been lobbying against her. And it's interesting, like they're all kind of making the same argument, like, you're punishing us for being good, you're punishing us for being successful and like owning the markets. But I think like what we'll probably see by the end of her tenure is that she is remaking these rules, and you know, some of these companies could look very different by the time all these cases are done.
I think, but I believe Lena Khan's term is up. Is it later this year or next year? It's very soon, so she's not going to be, you know, leading the FTC for too long. But looking at like what she's accomplished, even if it wasn't entirely successful against a lot of these companies, I do think like overall, like the government is kind of like taking a closer look at startups right now. There are several against Meta. There's several against all the big companies. Microsoft, in an earlier stage, took a lot of heat for basically, I don't know if people remember this, but it was because Internet Explorer was included within Windows, and that was a major problem because then it was the default and nobody else could really compete with that. Microsoft took a lot of flack for that, took a while, paid a lot of fines. Eventually, the solution was, hey, let's have a browser pop-up when you launch Windows to choose what you want to be your default browser. I think they found ways kind of around that right now too, which is kind of funny because you don't get default sent to Bing when you install Windows, but if you go try to install like Chrome or something or another browser while you're in Edge will tell you, hey, you're running a pretty fast browser right now that runs a lot of things Chrome does. Why are you going over to Chrome? You don't need to download this other browser. So yeah, no, Microsoft is still doing its thing. I feel like all these companies just want to push the limits until they're punished, right?
I mean, in the end, did it really, how much did that ruling hurt Microsoft in the 90s? I mean, it set them back a little bit, but I mean, look at Microsoft now. Like, I don't think anyone there is pointing to that ruling and saying, "Oh, well, if only we hadn't had that happen."
That was the moment that computers as a concept started going bad.
It was all over since then. I mean, I think that was maybe a big stumbling block against Internet Explorer because it probably forced them to like try to be better and try to compete on its own merits. But that was a freaking useless browser for so long. Like when I worked in IT, Internet Explorer was just the thing that brought all the bad stuff to Windows XP and everything else, and Windows Vista and everything. And I used to write like the tips for incoming students, like don't use Internet Explorer. Use Firefox. Use other browsers. Be careful about what you download. I once got a call from a student who was like, hello, my computer, my mouse is moving on its own and it's typing to me and somebody's typing messages to me.
Oh,
And
that's scary.
it was a full takeover of their computer. And I had to be like, unplug your computer from the internet. Step 1, unplug. But we were in a state where computers were so easily hacked and so vulnerable because of Internet Explorer and because of Microsoft's own issues. So I don't know. That's a bit of a flashback. I guess for Google, what is we don't have a sense of like what Judge Mehta says is going to happen or will be the result of this, but I almost imagine like Apple and others may just want to have something similar, like, hey, when you launch this for the first time, choose your default search engine. That's entirely up to you. We're going to be hands off on that. I feel like that's where it may go.
Yeah, I mean, that's like one really like I think easy to see scenario. There's also, there's scenarios where like maybe they could be forced to sell parts of their business. I know that's been speculated about. There's probably going to be big fines involved. But they're also still probably going to appeal whatever it is in the end as well. So who knows what they're going to actually have to do in the end. This could still play out over several more months.
The Microsoft antitrust judgment took like over a decade, I believe, of back and forth and everything. Like I wrote about that when I started writing about tech. It was like 2010. I was writing about some rulings through Europe and through the US government. And just hilarious. Just funny to see how quickly justice moves. Okay, so we're going to keep an eye on the story. Google's officially monopoly, and they don't feel very good about it. Something else in your wheelhouse, Krissa. In other news, we saw the news that X is suing advertisers for, quote, illegal boycott of the platform. This is hilarious. It also came with a new Linda Yaccarino video where she was very, very adamant about like how unjust it was that these advertisers did this and like were colluding against Twitter. Can you break the story down for us?
Yeah, so Linda Yaccarino posted what I can only describe as like a hostage video. Where she's like,
yeah,
alone in a room.
There's something trained at her, yeah.
And she's saying how she's so shocked to have found out that all of these advertisers had colluded to boycott X and hurt their users and denied by denying their business ad revenue that was somehow like really it's really for their users. So they're filing an antitrust lawsuit, interestingly in the state of Texas, not any of the states where they currently do business.
They may be moving their headquarters there, right? That was the story.
Well,
the report.
I mean,
yeah, who knows?
Musk said that, but
yeah, who knows?
They haven't many.
Well, they definitely are closing the like downtown San Francisco office.
Yeah, so they're suing the World Federation of Advertisers, and then like a subset of that group called GRAM. I forget what that acronym stands for at the moment.
Yeah.
But they're basically like a coalition of big digital advertisers that set kind of brand safety guidelines for the industry.
That is specifically GARM, the Global Alliance for Responsible Media. What an acronym and what a name. Jeez.
Yes, and this includes like CVS Health, Mars, Unilever, so like pretty big names in the digital ad world. And this lawsuit basically is saying that they conspire to carry out this boycott again, this advertising boycott against X, which is very hilarious argument actually.
Yeah, because what happened was essentially advertisers left because Elon Musk bought the site and was a toxic piece of crap for a very long time. Like that's you've covered things like the whole like, oh, we saw a lot more racist and anti-Semitic videos or posts on X, and there was no more content moderation, right?
Yeah, I mean, he got rid of the content moderators. There's all these groups that came out. There, tons of research, tons of examples of really, hateful, toxic stuff. A lot of times that was appearing alongside advertising. And X has spent the last 2 years trying desperately to convince advertisers that, they're fixing it. They're really the most brand safe platform out there. They've
Sure.
gone above and beyond all the requirements, and like, don't you really want to do business with them? But, on the other hand, the other thing that they didn't mention is that, by all accounts, we don't have a lot of visibility into this now that they're not a public company, but by all metrics, it appears that, a lot of people have left their platform. Their user base is actually shrank, which, could also be a reason why, perhaps some advertisers would want to leave, besides, its current associations. But yeah, they're basically saying like, we're going to, you guys aren't paying us anymore. And so we're mad and we're going to sue you for antitrust.
I thought these folks believed in the free market and
Yeah,
for folks to decide where they put their money, not
the
out of any
crazy thing
wokeness.
about this is that Musk and Yaccarino right now are saying, "Oh, we're very mad at GARM for like maybe colluding to like not advertise on us," when the entire idea of GARM is brand safety. The idea that you don't want your Pepsi or like Nestle ad right next to like based Kekistan, talking about how they need ethno state or something.
Or Elon Musk supporting white nationalists, basically.
Literally, like
Yeah.
they just want to make sure that the places that they advertise on are going to be brand safe, and you're not going to be able to get really easy screenshots of a Pepsi ad or a Coke ad right next to something really, really, really that you don't want associated with your company. And that's all X is right now.
It is, I tried to step away, folks. I tried the Mastodon, I tried Blue Sky. I still hang out at those places occasionally, but what I realized, all my friends are still on Twitter. Like everybody I talk to, like all the people I typically follow, and I'm not gonna let some billionaire just get in there and like ruin my neighborhood, right? Like he's literally the villain in the '80s movie who's trying to I don't know, destroy the rec center. Like that's basically what it is. And we're like, no, we're not. We live here. We're not going to let this stand.
Okay, but the actual like analogy is that you are living, or you're choosing to continue to live in a neighborhood that is rapidly dilapidating.
Oh, absolutely.
You're living
I'm
in
used to that, buddy.
Okay, but you're living in like, I don't know, Detroit in the 90s or something. Like things are getting actively worse, and you're just hoping that eventually something will change.
We hope eventually something will change. And also, it helps to be there to see what the hell is happening because, hey, these free speech warriors, Elon Musk and his crew, so the free speech is so hard on Twitter right now. If you write the word cisgender, you will get flagged for potentially violating conduct, which is the funniest meme I've seen right now, too. I'm sure you've seen this, Krista, where Elon Musk says something about free speech. And like, what a great free speech platform is. And the first reply with all the likes is somebody just saying cisgender, and the auto-populated site warning, content warning pops up. Guess that's not, can't have free speech around that. Similar.
I mean, okay, let me contradict myself.
Yep.
And I was previously saying that X is not really relevant so much anymore. I still think that's kind of true. On the other hand, it did have a really significant hand in the riots that happened in England last weekend.
Sure.
So, and
in a good way or bad way, just in terms of disseminating the information.
Oh yeah, no, disseminating information about a knife crime that killed a couple of kids, and then they said that it was tied to a mosque, and it was not actually tied to that mosque, and so there were a bunch of
and doxed the wrong person.
Yeah, doxed the wrong person. So a bunch of bigoted people just like stormed this mosque thinking that they were going to be doing something good. But no, it was really just using X as a way to direct, some like racist energy.
It sucks. It sucks. Like, basically a whole weekend of mob activity in the UK. Just awful to see. I will also say on the flip side, like social media, like any tool, can be used for good or evil. We were talking about JD Vance and couches entirely because of one person's shitpost. One person's shitpost changed the world. Basically,
It wouldn't be the first time.
It would not be the first time, but it wasn't even like a video. It wasn't even like it was just a normal sized tweet.
That Twitter magic is still there.
That Twitter magic is still there. Great trolling. The power of trolling can be used for good. And now you have, the new vice presidential candidate making couch jokes about JD Vance. So the internet still.
Okay, so what happens from here, Carissa? What do you think?
Yes.
So it's an interesting question. I think if they had sued anywhere else, this case, we could probably say that they don't have much of a chance with this, let's say, legal theory. But this is not the first time that Elon Musk and X have sued an organization that they didn't like, that they thought was associated with this boycott. They sued two other groups, the Center for Countering Digital Hate and Media Matters, which were both had done research showing that there was hate speech on the platform.
Yeah, Media Matters had a couple great articles about that. Yeah.
Yes, and the lawsuit against CCDH got dismissed. The lawsuit against Media Matters is before a judge in Texas, the same judge that looks like got this case, and he has not dismissed it. He's actually done some kind of unusual things, according to some of the legal people I've seen talk about this case. They've granted a ton of discovery before Media Matters have actually been able to argue for a dismissal, which has been super costly for them. They've run up huge legal fees. They had to do layoffs. So, that lawsuit is now really affecting that organization in a bad way, even though, it's probably, and there's a judge that is going along with that. If in Texas, who knows, ideologically, if they're aligned with Musk or not. It seems like they're at least, a lot more willing to entertain these theories than perhaps other judges. So the fact that this case looks like it's getting the same judge is, we might actually see more come of this than we would think, just based on how ridiculous it seems. That's kind of the weird thing with Musk is like somehow he can still get these little victories that you wouldn't expect, just because they can throw so much money and influence at these things.
It's totally sad. There are so many examples of free speech being chilled on Twitter right now. A friend of mine just got maybe because of posts they were retweeting or things they were tweeting, got a little post saying your account has been flagged for potentially spam activity or nefarious activity. Just a normal poster, nothing unusual, not even a major poster. What were you going to say, Ben?
Oh, just that I don't see how this lawsuit could go so poorly for GARM, because GARM has a pretty good way of saying, like, our entire idea is making sure that everything is brand safe, and you can see from these many screenshots that there's lots of stuff that is not brand safe on this website, on top of the lower user activity, on top of the fact that the site isn't growing anymore. Like, you can put it in the most kangaroo court in the country if you want, but I still don't think that there's going to be a really surprising outcome.
Yep, that's pretty much it. Yeah,
I mean, and this time he's not going up against a small nonprofit. This time he's trying to bully some of the biggest advertisers in the world, who presumably have very highly paid legal teams. So
this will probably be fun to watch. I just want to see Unilever like throw some soap at him or something, just like just attack him completely. Well, you know what, Carissa, thank you so much for joining us to chat about this stuff. I'm sure you'll be following the X and Twitter story and probably the Google Monopoly stuff too. Where can we find your work online these days?
You can find me hanging out mostly on Threads these days. I am still on X. Mostly lurking, not tweeting much these days. And
how are you liking Threads? Because every time I go there, I'm just like, man, you're still so thirsty. You're showing people at me that you want to like make viral. Like it seems like it's going so hard.
I'm coming around to it. I'm spending a lot of time there. The algorithm is still surfaces some questionable stuff sometimes, but the engagement is a lot better. Like, people interact. It's weird because I have far fewer followers than I ever had on X, but I get, people actually, it feels like your content actually gets, your posts get in front of people, they interact with you. It actually feels like a lively place with people. Whereas I feel like X, for the past few years, just kind of feels like you're just kind of shouting into the void most of the time.
Oh yeah, because your posts are being weighted against people paying for X too. So like,
Yes.
if you're not a Twitter Blue subscriber, then yeah, nobody will see you.
One more question, Carissa. You work in news. How often do you thread about news? Especially given the fact that Meta has pretty much said like Threads is a good vibes only place. Like, please don't talk about like controversial news stuff.
I mean, very often, I think I try to share a lot of my own work on there. I definitely, I've definitely been ignoring the kind of don't talk about politics or political content, or your stuff won't get surfaced by the algorithm. I mean, first of all, I think that's just kind of a ridiculous stance for a company that's trying to like build some version of the public square. And also just based on what I've seen, like their algorithm is not actually that good at separating what's like political content and what's not.
Yeah.
So, I kind of ignore that. I'm not somebody who's going to like jump in and talk about every kind of thing that's going on with the election or whatnot. But if there's, a story that's related to politics that I'm working on, or, even not, that I'm interested in, like I'm all about like getting out there and just, putting my thoughts out.
You're kind of implying that you see good engagement from it, right? From those posts?
I think the guarantee
it's certainly better than X.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that settles it for me.
I think the algorithm in Threads does weight towards, hey, people want to see stuff happening with their posts. They want to see likes. They want to see replies. So like they've tweaked it around that. Carissa, you're doing a great job of sharing your work around. I see your stuff on LinkedIn too. So like you're hardcore when you're sharing posts on LinkedIn.
I'm trying, I'm like, we gotta I'll take all the engagement I can get, and I'm like, well, and LinkedIn's kind of interesting because
it is,
I like dismiss it, but like there's actually like a lot of people who are really into like LinkedIn and commenting, and that's kind of like a source of news for them, which I can't say is ever a way I've used it, but that's what they want. I'm just going to I'll give the people what they want.
The business influencer crowd is very much on LinkedIn, especially like big corporate people and honestly executives too, from what I've seen. So it's a thing. But all right. Thank you so much for joining us, Carissa. We'll chat again soon.
Thank you.
All right. Take a pause. Send that audio to Ben, please.
Yep.
All right.
Hello, chat. I see a good thing. This won't be part of the episode, but I see from Naranjan Banda, why not create a personal blog style extra page on Gadget for personal thoughts rather than Twitter?
What if we told you it was also about brand safety?
Also about brand safety. But also, no, we did have like a community style thing where we were taking posts in from the community too, when everybody was into community produced content. And we were a little more loose on that too. It was a whole thing, but it's about visibility. And honestly, for reporters too, like you don't want to tie your existence to all your job. There's stuff you need to be able to say personally. I do miss personal blogs. I do miss like, I remember the 90s. I spent a while crafting some GeoCities pages and refreshing. And I was excited one day when I got 12 hits. So that was the good stuff. But now you got to go to social media.
We're kind of on our way toward personal blogs again.
It's the newsletters are kind of bringing it back a little bit.
Newsletters are kind of bringing it back. You have the idea of like everybody has a link tree in bio now. And so you hit the link tree, you get options for all the socials.
Yep.
And all you need is, I don't know, one cool website that feels like Tumblr did in like 2010, 2011 to get people really back into blogging again.
I don't know if we'll ever get there. People do it now, like they make newsletters and other things out of love. Media people make newsletters often, like what I'm seeing, also out of just like necessity. Like a lot of people are losing their jobs, and trying to build your own thing is kind of the only way to do it, even if it's a crappy company like Substack. I miss the old internet where people would just like hang out, like have really interesting homepages, browse around, follow web rings to other sites that people like. Maybe we'll get some of that back eventually.
Yeah. If anybody watching is wondering why Taylor Lorenz is everywhere, it's because she knows that better than most
absolutely.
people. She knows that she could get like laid off by the Washington Post tomorrow, and she wants to make sure that like her situation is she has other outlets.
She has other outlets. She's all over the place.
She has other outlets, and you have to become a brand in order to do that. That's kind of crappy.
It's awful. We lost Carissa there, but yes, thank you so much, Carissa. I know she was heading out. You got to be a brand, and it sucks because
Not
hey,
every writer wants to be a brand. Not
it's
every
so
writer is the
hard.
sort of person who can build a brand around themselves. That
Yeah,
takes a lot of like being very conscious of your image and stuff. And that might actually come, like the image consciousness might actually come at the expense of like depth of reporting.
absolutely. That's the thing. Like when you go to journalism school, or even reading, watching, if you grew up watching newscasters or reading journalists over the past few decades, nobody was like, you also need to know how to shoot TikTok videos and like produce good audio for podcasts and things like that. Like this is all new stuff, and it's really tough to get a handle on. But anyway, let's we digress. We've got some
Yeah.
other news to go through. We'll move through it really quickly.
Yep.
It's a bunch of gadgets and other stuff. And I know you have thoughts on a lot of this, Ben. All right, let me just take a breath here. All right. All right. Let's get back into it in 3, 2, 1. All right. Thanks so much, Krista, for joining us. Let's move on to some other news. We got some actual gadgets this week, too, not just policy stuff and advertisers. Google made a couple announcements. They announced the Google TV Streamer, which is their official replacement for the Chromecast line. It is a sliver of a device. Like this is a really strange device. It's no longer a dongle like the previous Google TV device. It is almost kind of like pillbox shaped. It's a little bigger than the like round Google remote. It is also an Internet of Things device. It can also be like, I believe, a broadcaster for Matter devices, or like, what do you call that, a satellite for Matter devices. Has slightly better hardware. The Chromecast with Google TV came out in 2020. This one has 22% faster CPU, double the RAM, 4 gigabytes instead of 2, and 4 times more storage. So that's 32 gigabytes of storage. That's useful for apps and things like that. Not so much. I don't think people are really downloading videos on this. You get your basic streaming stuff. You get 4K 60 FPS, HDR, Dolby Vision. It's a streaming device. It has Ethernet in the back. It seems pretty straightforward. It is interesting, though, to see Google kind of go back to this rather than just like the cool little dongles that it's been leaning on for so long. Like, Ben, do you got any thoughts about that?
No, I'm just happy to see that Google is still doing a streamer, and it makes sense with the next thing that we're going to be talking about.
Absolutely. The streamer, let me see here. It's interesting because like Google is trying so hard not to be a streaming company, but also the whole Google TV branding was a weird thing as well. Like that was like 2010, 2011. They initially started that with some devices from Logitech and other companies. I tested one of those. They even installed a Dish Network satellite on my Brooklyn apartment to like test it out. And that was basically, you had a giant keyboard and an interface that combined satellite TV plus like occasional web access. It was not good. Now we're in a simple situation where people just want a simple remote for getting streaming content. Also, streaming video was like not nearly as big as it was back then.
Mm.
I do miss. I think I will miss the idea of the Chromecast because that was cool. That thing was what, $35. It was really cheap when it came out. Um, it got better over time, but it was just like, hey, you don't need a giant Apple TV or a Roku box. Just stick this little thing in your HDMI jack and you've got a streaming device, or you can
One
cast to
could
it from your
say
phone.
that it kind of predicted like the Fire Stick, right?
Well, kind of. I guess kind of. The Fire Stick is a full on like, hey, set top box with an OS and everything. It is this, before the
But
Fire
the
Stick, Roku did make sticks too. So
yeah,
Roku did it first. Yeah.
okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, these devices got smaller. What was interesting about the Chromecast is it was essentially just like a little server waiting for you to send information to it from your phone.
Mhm.
And since that thing came out and it's been upgraded, devices just have casting. Your
Yeah,
TV
that's
has
true,
casting
that's true.
support. Video receivers have casting. So you don't really need the Chromecast as much because if you have a modern piece of equipment, you'll probably be fine with it. But I still have to say RIP Chromecast. Also RIP still the Chromecast audio, which was a cool little thing. That was a cool way to I plugged that into some old speakers when that came out, and I could stream to those speakers and they still sounded great. Yeah, it's good stuff.
So it seems
Mhm.
like this is really like more of a smart home hub, which is why I was talking about the next thing we're going to be talking about, which is the new Nest thermostat.
Yes.
But they're like, okay, well, if we're asking people to like connect us to their TV, then we better have some streaming on it too. So it's more of a hub with streaming rather than a streaming box with a hub.
I mean, that's
Is that
kind of the
correct?
way they work right now. The Apple TV is technically also a hub for AppleKit. It's not like a widely advertised thing, but I think what these companies are doing is essentially you have this box, it's connected to the internet, it has antennas, and maybe we can use those antennas for more than just Wi-Fi, more than just to stream stuff to you. Like this is a cool little box with a decent amount of smarts that can do Internet of Things controls don't take much bandwidth. So I think they're kind of using it in that respect. Yeah, we also wrote about the new Nest Learning thermostat, which has it's basically all display now. The LCD display is 60% larger. What's cool is that the text kind of changes size depending on how far away you are from it. So that's kind of cool. It's using the I think the Soli sensor, the Soli radar sensor to do that. Has some AI features. It'll also come with a sensor that you could put elsewhere in the room. But yeah, it also is a built-in sort of like a Matter hub, or it can all connect together. I assume if you have the Nest thermostat, like maybe you could do some cool stuff if you have the Google TV streamer. I don't know if anybody cares about this stuff, but it's cool.
So the Nest
Yeah,
thermostat hadn't been updated in a long
in
time,
a
correct?
long time. Yeah.
So were you ever afraid that this could end up on the Google graveyard?
Oh, absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, Google is notorious for just like throwing out stuff that pretty much works, but I don't know, they get bored of it or they don't know how to like connect it with other stuff.
Hmm.
But it seems like the Nest Hub was or not Nest Hub, excuse me, Nest thermostat
Yeah.
was always kind of just going to be shambling along, even if it hadn't gotten much of an update, because that's where a lot of Google's smart home like
Hmm.
value lives. Other than that,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Controlling lights?
I remember when the Nest thermostat first came out, everyone was like, "Ooh, a thermostat with a screen. We've never seen that before." And once Google bought them, all the stories were like Nest just could not really survive under Google's management. Like as a company, as a sub brand of Google, it was just kind of a mess. So that's why there has not been much of much advancements there. Also, you don't replace your thermostats that much, so there's no real need to constantly have new ones. I have some of the real basic ass Nest thermostats, so not the Nest Learning thermostat. I have just the basic Nest one.
Mhm.
And to me, that's fine. I've heard so many horror stories from people who have the learning thermostats because that learning assumes a lot and often
Mm,
does controls where it's like, I really want my house to be warm. It's the middle of
mhm.
winter. I want my house to be warm by the time I get there. And you could set up a thing, and the learning, because of the learning mechanisms of it, which you're not quite sure of, it may not be as warm as you want because
Yeah,
Google decided better for you, which is
yeah,
also why like the AI features they're talking about here, I'm like, I don't know about that. I don't know if anybody is really gonna you want your thermostat just to do what you're telling it. Maybe a few tweaks here and there to be like, hey, maybe I could save you some bucks by not going so warm, but you also don't want it to go overboard, you know? I feel like
yeah.
that's my main thing. Okay, moving on. We saw the story that Meta is reportedly offering Hollywood actors millions to use their voices in AI projects. Reportedly, Aquafina, Judi Dench, and Keegan Michael Key could be part of their new digital assistant, Meta AI. This is not the same Meta AI that we talked about. Was it last year, where the chatbot platform with 28 characters voiced by celebrities.
Yeah.
The information reported that Meta just entirely gave up on that project. Like if you go back, look for references of that on Facebook or Instagram, they just never happened.
Okay, so how
Yeah.
much money did they pay to pulling up the article now?
Hmm.
Kendall Jenner,
Yeah.
Dwayne Wade, Charlie
Millions.
D'Amelio, Tom
Millions.
Brady, Mr. Beast, like for their image rights, because all these people are lawyered, agented up
Hmm.
enough to have image rights in their contracts and everything. And then they're just like, oh, you know what? We don't want to do this. People aren't interacting with it. I think you're going to see a lot more companies burning a lot more money
Hmm.
in a similar way to try to get people to interact with AI in like any way that's actually fun for them.
Whatever it takes, however much money it takes. Like this is Meta using its wealth to fund AI, just like Google used its wealth to fund its dominance in search. Like it is, everyone's desperate and they're doing whatever they can, and throwing money wherever they can to kind of make this happen. So yeah, we don't know much about this yet. This is not an official thing. I believe Meta's Connect conference in September is when we're going to hear more about this. But I think the
If they
idea,
can figure out the deals.
yeah,
And I think the problem is that Meta is saying, "Hey, Screen Actors Guild, I know
hmm
that you just went through this really difficult strike last year to figure out like AI stuff.
hmm
But hey, would you like to figure out some AI stuff again?"
yeah. Most definitely, most definitely. I mean, we are still in the midst of the SAG-AFTRA video game actor strike too,
Yep.
and maybe some of those people, I'm sure they'd want to get some like notable like I'm trying to think of somebody, notable video game actors or voices would want to be here too. The idea is to basically get these folks to say some lines and incorporate it right into whatever their next conversational AI general assistant is. I don't know, man. I don't know. We saw this stuff initially with Waze, where Waze had celebrity voices just giving you directions. I understand that. I
I
think it's
did
really
use the Snoop Dogg turn-by-turn
love it.
directions for a
I
while.
loved it. They were so fun. The problem was they didn't stick around, right? They were only licensed for a short time, so you can't have like your forever Waze voice. And also for this, if I was an actor, I'd be like, I don't know exactly what you're gonna say with my voice. Like, can
Yeah.
you really guarantee that you are gonna have good guardrails so that my voice is not saying weird things because of your because of your technology? I don't think they can.
And
So
also, every actor has their own list of
mhm.
guardrails, probably,
Yeah.
just because of their, background or
Mhm.
the types of projects that they tend to work on. What if you had an actor well known for horror movies saying that horror movies are bad or
Mhm.
something?
I'm sure this is something the union like SAG will probably like lock into, like just to have a base level protections for everybody. But I'm not excited about this. Speaking of Meta, speaking of tons of money being used towards AI slop, there was a great article from 44 Media. Love those folks by Jason Kebler. Talking specifically about like a lot of the memed AI images come from. Apparently, a lot of it's from places like India and Vietnam and the Philippines. AI spam that's used to generate engagement, basically. Uh, Ben, I know you were really into this story. Can you like lay this out for us?
Yeah, so right now, one of the windows I have open
Mhm.
is the YouTube homepage. The first thing that I see on the YouTube homepage is some promoted video that says, "I just made arbitrage trading bot with ChatGPT,"
Mhm.
and like a guy with laser eyes and a little screen that shows like how much he has in Ethereum and how much money that is. It seems like a lot of the AI slop is coming from, like you said, Indian and
Mhm.
Vietnamese YouTubers who are using this same logic as the finance gurus selling classes to show people how to make AI slop to put it on Facebook.
Mhm.
They're getting so specific as to say, Indian audiences like this. American audiences really like pets. So it would be great if you made a new Facebook page and then just posted a lot. And if you post a lot, eventually you'll be invited to the like get paid to post on Facebook program,
Mhm.
even though there should be more guardrails for who gets paid to post on Facebook. And then once you're in the get paid to post on Facebook program, you can earn a lot of money USD, or let me put a
Mhm.
finer point on that. You can earn a lot of money in local currency because you're making money in USD. And so if you have one post of Shrimp Jesus that you generated with Bing Image Generator, that goes massively, massively viral, and tons of Facebook people are saying amen to the picture of Shrimp Jesus, then you might make something like $200 American, which is way more than you would make monthly as someone doing a relatively low wage job in India.
That also requires lots of hard labor too. So I want to be
Yes.
clear, I'm not faulting anybody for like trying to get paid from Meta to do a lot of this dumb AI stuff. It is just funny to see like this is what these companies rely on, right? It's like when a lot of people are talking about their AI image matching or things like that. Like it turns out it's usually low wage workers in Africa or other like all over the world, but not the West. Um it's still people. It's still people powering this stuff, and these companies are so desperate to, like, make something hit, to make people care about AI video that they're just spending so much to make this happen too.
And in
They're yeah.
some cases, it's part of these AI like images are part of like a larger scam.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're actually like trying to get money from people, but in a lot of other cases, it's literally just like, here's something that looks like a photo album of Jesus hanging out with like attractive cabin crew members. I don't know what it is. I mean, yes, like Jesus is always going to be popular, or it's going to be like some white guy with long hair and like kind of a short beard that kind of sort of looks like Jesus. Cabin crew, uh like veterans and other military personnel who are literally wearing like fatigues and stuff. Often they're amputees. Sometimes
Mhm,
it's like
mhm.
really, really graphic images
Yeah,
of like poor people like squatting by the side of a
yeah.
road.
Emaciated people, like, it's sympathy creation, I think is what they're a lot of folks are trying to do. So share
Yeah.
around this image, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, like, one of the most interesting facts from this article was that in a lot of cases, the image might be weird because the prompt is being translated
Mhm.
from Hindi or Urdu into English, and then you're
Yeah,
putting
yeah.
the English prompt into the image generator, and so it's getting the like partial translation, like not great semantic meaning from the original thing that you wanted, and you're just like putting that on Facebook.
Yep.
So it reminds me of that quote about how like the future is here but it's not very well distributed. Dystopia is also here. It's just you don't always see it,
You
or
don't
you
always see it,
see it
but you feel
through
the
these
effects
like
of it.
really weird,
Mhm,
especially like people living in, Western countries. You
mhm.
see it in this like very strange kind of glancing way, like this is why there's so much AI crap on Facebook.
Stuff your aunts or uncles would share, like, this is where a lot of it comes from, so, I don't know. I don't know what
I
this is
wonder if
amount
it
to.
goes as crazy on WhatsApp as it does on Facebook.
I mean, most definitely. I'd have to assume, like, yeah, especially with older generations sharing wild images. Like AI is producing stuff that we have never seen before, and I think it's just freaking a lot of people out, but also making it something people want to share. So, yeah, we don't know what's going to come up from this. It just seems like a thing Facebook is doing, Meta is doing to promote its AI images. I wonder if they're going to get like they're not technically doing anything wrong here. They're just using their money to produce this. But I wonder if somebody's going to say something about like, is this weird? Is this inhumane? I don't know. Speaking of humane, by the way, brief, briefly,
Excellent segue.
we saw the story this week that people are apparently returning the Humane AI pin faster than the company can sell them. Some interesting numbers here. To date, around 10,000 AI pins have been sold. To who? Who is buying these things? 3,000 have been returned. That means 7,000 are still in the hands of customers. For a $700 device, that is still that's a lot of things out there. Apparently, also over 1,000 pre-orders were canceled once the reviews started coming in, like Sherlin's great review about it being absolutely terrible. What's even more interesting here, by the way, is that the company has no way to like refurbish or recycle these things, so they just get dumped.
Oh,
So
cool.
they have no way to like resell them to make even like a minimal amount of payback. It's just garbage.
So is this the AI pin version of the fact that they buried all those ET NES games?
They will maybe it'll get stripped for parts. I don't know. Our future will find these things and try to build the story around why humans created them.
I'd really love to have one of these because I was saying a few episodes ago
And then they
that,
catch
like,
fire. They explode.
yeah, okay, yes, they did get very, very hot. But I was saying before that, like, oh, I
Mhm.
was like really interested in that that
Mm-hmm.
let me, what's the mask?
The Razor mask.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Razer Zephyr mask.
Yes.
So I was thinking about buying one of those just because it was like a cool cyberpunk thing. And now that Razer had to refund everyone who bought one, it would have been free. That would have been like a cool thing for my personal museum of garbage tech. And I'd love to have a Humane AI pin for the personal museum of garbage tech, but it's working on central servers, so eventually it will just be an object. Like, you can't even
Oh
get
yeah.
it to connect to anything, because once
Maybe the
Humane,
laser projector will throw an error message and you can hold
I
your hand up. I don't
yeah,
know.
I can only hope, but, like, once Humane does whatever it does in its end stages, it's just going to end up getting bricked, right?
Oh yeah, most definitely. It's I mean, I like buying dead old hardware just to look at the hardware. I never expect the software to like stay living. Like I've got a couple Zune HDs around. I have some Kin phones, the Microsoft Kin phones. I still want to get a Palm Pre because I want to do the sliding and feel that keyboard.
Very
Never
quick
expect them to spoil.
correction from
Mhm.
Mark Dell. He says that the ET games that were buried in a landfill were Atari games, not
Yes,
NES games. So
Atari games.
I keep on saying, chat keeps us honest. Thank you for keeping us honest.
Thank you for keeping us honest. I actually think this is a good place right now for the correction, Ben. So I will just put this in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Um, and you can actually move this up in the episode too if you think it fits somewhere. But I'm just gonna
I
drop this
think
as a
that
thing to put in.
this is
Mhm.
a good place in the correction, for the correction in the episode. So
Okay,
just go.
okay, okay. Also, that okay. That's it for news this week, folks. But we do want to issue a quick correction to something we talked about last week. Sholin and I made a lot of fun about Southwest running old software like Windows 3.5. And that is not true. I was not around for this news cycle, so I did not fully see the corrections, but that was a shit post. Uh, just like certain things around couches. It was eventually corrected. Southwest does run old software. And that is still why like it wasn't as affected by the CrowdStrike stuff, but
It
it's
just
not Windows
doesn't use
3.5.
CrowdStrike too.
Yeah,
Old
yeah.
like kind of old software and not using CrowdStrike, but we were wrong in saying that Southwest uses Windows 3.5. We regret the error.
We would not wish that upon anyone. Let's move on to what we're working on real quick. I'm still testing some AI PC stuff. I wrote up a review for something we'll be talking about in a bit, and we're all prepping for the Google event next week as well. And we're all thinking about Apple too. Like, yeah, the Apple stuff is coming down soon. So that's me. Ben, anything you want to shout out?
Just keep on going.
Keep on going. Okay. And moving on to pop culture picks for the week. Ben, what do you got?
Do me second.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to pop culture picks for the week. For me, I have been all in on Industry season 3. This is a show I've been loving forever. Let me just pull this up, my review, so I remember some specific names here. Oh, come on. Okay. Industry is a show I've told Cherlin to watch like years ago. Season 3 is starting on Sunday, and this is a show created by Mickey Down and Conrad Kay, who are two British screenwriters. This is their first project, actually, their first like major series. Season 1 of Industry was like their first basically big series of their own. And I really love this show. It is very much like Succession. It's about people who are mostly terrible, who are kind of amoral, making decisions that are often very selfish and behaving badly. But it's also very fascinating to see people in that, behave that way, I guess. Unlike Succession, it's also about people who are striving to be rich and striving to be powerful. And I think the thing I love Succession so much, but that was ultimately a show about a rich family trying really hard to hold on to like their place in the world and the money that they have, and the rich adults to try to hold on to their wealth. This is a show that's a little bit different because I think people are more ambitious because they're trying to get to that point. So it's about an investment bank called Pierpoint that is world renowned, and we start off following a bunch of young characters. It's a lot like Skins, actually, where it's a young crew of people who become friends. They have a lot of personal dynamics or relationships between them. There's a lot of soap opera stuff, but there's also a lot of I think storylines around ambition and what they're all trying to achieve and how smart they are. We had a really good interview. I talked with Conrad K. and Mickey Down, and you can listen to that at the end of this episode. But they talk about the show as something they like, is just seeing competent people being very good at their jobs. And that is something that just really hits for me. Michael Clayton is one of my favorite movies. I love everything Tony Gilroy writes. I love fixers. I love people who are smart and just like clearly very capable. And all these characters are essentially some version of that. So I think that itself is very entertaining. And also, yeah, it also explores the investment banking world and the financial world in ways that we don't really see too often. I think of movies like Margin Call or Boiler Room, maybe Wall Street. Um, this is very technical. It's very gritty. It's very in there, and I think it's a fantastic show. It's also evolved to be really ambitious in season 3. What's his face? Jon Snow, Kit Harington from Game of Thrones joined season 3 as a startup founder. Maybe something's fishy about him. So it is really interesting to see them go full into like a bit of the tech world too. But yeah, take a listen to our interview at the end of this episode. You can hear some thoughts on that. And I also wrote up a review at the site, so check it out at Engadget.com. Also, want to quickly shout out, I really enjoyed Trap, which is M. Night Shyamalan's latest movie that is super divisive, but I love a divisive movie. I love his like unreality of the way he constructs things. Nobody in that movie behaves like an actual human being, but it is a really fun thing to watch in a theater. It's like it's almost he basically made a midnight movie unintentionally. He's like totally sincere about it, but it is as bonkers as something like The Room at times. Like it just goes places. I had a lot of fun with it. You can check out my full review at the Filmcast podcast at thefilmcast.com. Ben, you got anything you want to shout out?
Yeah. So if you've heard some of my picks when I get to do picks in the past,
Mm-hmm.
you'll know that I am very much a documentary guy. I work in documentaries, like doing kind of NPR sort of stuff when I'm not doing Engadget stuff. And I'm really into the films of Frederick Wiseman right
Mm-hmm.
now. He is a documentary director who will just point a camera at stuff and let things transpire.
Mm-hmm.
There is no sitting people down for confessional interviews. There is kind of sort of like main characters that they will follow,
Mm-hmm.
but it won't really try to make a huge story out of these specific characters. It's more about the place. A lot of his movies are named for the place rather than, some whiz bang phrase someone said during the filming of the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
So you have these names like high school. It's he just went to a high school and filmed a bunch of stuff.
Yep.
I was recently watching Basic Training, which is Army basic training around the Vietnam War era. There's another film that I'm looking forward to called Missile that was released in 1988, and it
Mm-hmm.
was just about like the training process and the day-to-day operation of a nuclear missile silo.
I mean, not too long ago, he did Ex Libris, right? The one about the New York Public Library, which is a
Yep.
fantastic film. Everybody should see that. It's really
And
good.
he did a really great one. Actually, the reason that I went and started watching a lot of his
Mhm.
stuff is that he released a doc late last year that was also like in theaters kind of early this year about a
Yep.
French restaurant, like a
Mhm.
3 Michelin star French restaurant, and just the day-to-day comings and goings of that. I have to warn listeners, some of these movies can be boring.
You're
I
just
watched
watching stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, sometimes it's, like, really amazing because, like, there's this one scene in Basic Training where a drill sergeant is talking about how he's reading this book about, like, reincarnation and karma and, like, all of that stuff, and you're like, "Wow, that's a really interesting point of view for a drill sergeant in that era." Like, that's really cool to see. And then there are other cases, like, at Berkeley, where he just hung out at UC Berkeley for a while, where it just feels like you're in a college class.
Mhm.
So if you're not into watching like a 20-minute long cut of just a college class discussion, maybe skip that one or feel free to skip around, especially at
Yeah.
Berkeley, because that one is like 3 hours long.
skip around, but you gotta put your phone down, get in the vibe. Like these are
Yeah,
movies where you gotta groove with them, and if you don't, it's fine. But it is. I wish more people were making movies like this. Yeah,
yeah. So
purely observational. Yeah.
check out the films of Frederick Wiseman. I can't recommend them to everybody, but for some people, you'll really love them.
Awesome. Good pick, Ben. Thank you so much. Well, that's it for the show this week, folks. Our theme music is by game composer Dale North. Our outro music is by our former managing editor, Terrence O'Brien. The podcast is produced by Ben Ellman, this guy right here. You can find me online at Devindra on Twitter, Mastodon, all over. I'm on Threads, but I don't really talk to people on Threads. Sorry. Where can we find you, Ben?
You can find me at an email address. Send me an email at benelman.wave. That's benellman.wav at gmail.com.
I love the dot wave. Email us at podcast@engadget.com. Leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on anything that gets podcasts, folks, including Spotify. And stay tuned for my chat with Mickey Down and Conrad K, the showrunners of Industry.
Okay, do you want to record a thing at the end of the intro to say, hey, stick around for the
I'll do
industry
that. I'll do that
conversation?
separately. We don't have to do this now.
Okay, sure.
I'll send you a quick thing. And hello, folks. Hello, Mark Dell. We're going to be heading out soon, but just want to say
Yes.
hi.
DPro9 says, sounds like I need my glaucoma medicine to watch it. That might actually be a fantastic way to watch Wiseman documentaries. Just get a little bit stoned, and then like that will get you really in the vibe to just like watch things transpire at a Michelin restaurant or the New York Public Library or something.
I see your note now. Who wrote that? Somebody wrote about. Mark Dell says I didn't know Windows 3.5 exists. Yeah, we meant Windows 3.1. God damn it.
Okay, so
another. I'm just gonna re-record that.
Yeah,
or was that you, Ben? I forget. I thought I don't know. We'll say Windows 3. I'll just re-record a separate.
We'll
just
just
thing. All right. Why don't do you guys want to chat for a bit, or shall I shut this down? I got to run to the bathroom.
I'll chat for a bit. All
right. I'll be right back, folks.
Okay. Yeah.
Take a look at my bookshelf.
DPro9 says Adam Curtis is my favorite documentary director. I've been meaning to get into some Adam Curtis documentaries for a while. DPro, if you could suggest a good like Adam Curtis starter. I was thinking about what is it? The Age of Narcissism or something. I'm looking it up now. Oh, the Century of the Self. Excuse me. So yeah, I was thinking about Adam Curtis, The Century of the Self. But DPro9 also says Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace. Or I don't know, you deleted that one. Looking back in the chat, Mark Dell says that AI peaked at spaghetti eating videos. You know, the spaghetti eating videos are probably less horrific now than they were like 18 months ago, like 24 months ago. But I imagine that they're still kind of scary because have you seen that trend online, especially like on TikTok, where like people have given classic videos from Vine to like AI video generators, and so they'll do like the 6 seconds that was in the Vine, something like, you know, road work ahead, I sure hope it does, and then it'll just extend it in really, really weird ways, I guess because it doesn't have any more data to like extrapolate from. So I think that the spaghetti probably would look a little more realistic, but it would probably still be horrific. I mean, if the Toys R Us video that we featured a few episodes ago has anything to say, it's probably still horrific. Looking back. George Morgan says, like 99.9% of why this is so bad, the reason is money. Yes, absolutely. DPro9 says, speaking of dystopia, have you seen the stock markets recently? Stock market really poopy last several days. Seems like things are on a better course
And
now.
that was like a real shock reaction to a bunch of different things
Yeah,
happening at the
and
same
it
time.
like
Yeah.
a lot of it was the connection between like Western markets and the Japanese market, especially like Japanese currency stuff. I'm not a finance guy. I'm not going to say anything more about that.
It was scary. If you have a retirement account, don't look at it for a while.
Yeah,
Just ignore
definitely.
it.
Mark Dell says, "Where can I find this AI slop asking for a friend?" Honestly, I don't really know because I just see it on Facebook because I think not enough of the people I know post on Facebook.
Mhm.
So the news feed will just kind of like auto populate like other stuff for me to
I
engage
see it
with.
from like older family, from like older folks who are still using Facebook.
Okay, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
see anyone
Mhm.
I know like promoting like AI slop. It's usually stuff that just gets like thrown in there. And then
Well, they
I've
don't know
watched
it's AI. It's just like, hey, this image is weird. Let's share this around.
Oh, yeah, and you know, one that I forgot to mention is,
Mhm.
I think, probably one of the most emotionally manipulative for people in the West, which is,
Mhm.
like, smiling African child next to,
Mhm.
like, amazing contraption that he built.
Yeah. Yep. That totally.
That there are
Love the poor.
so many layers to why
Ugh.
that goes viral and why it's gross.
Ugh.
But I've seen other people scroll through their Facebook news feed, like close friends who are okay with me watching over their shoulder as they're
Uh-huh.
on their phone. And if you have a list of friends that are more active on Facebook for whatever reason, I think you're less likely to get AI slop.
Yeah. I think it's totally it. Deeper Nine says new Alien movie coming out, Romulus. Yes, I'm seeing that Monday night. Hope to review it on the site by Fede Alvarez, who is fantastic. I love that man. He did a really good Evil Dead remake. Don't Speak is fantastic. I love him. Yeah.
DPro9 says in the next 5 years, AI video will look incredible. I think that really depends on how many people
Mm-hmm.
actually want to use it, and also whether or not artists want to interact with the development of AI video.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have exclusively tech people, people that like know video as a concept but don't work in video every single day, if they're not if the video folks aren't interacting with it, then it's not going to get better in the way that you hope it will.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's anyone's guess on whether or not video folks will actually interact with AI video, because there's a very good argument saying that the people who do video as a job don't really want to touch it because they're afraid it's going to take their job.
There's that, and even the really good stuff I've seen so far. Somebody made one of that, like, hey, the final moments of Pompeii, right? Just like a completely AI generated thing of citizens in Pompeii hearing the volcano explode, like what immediately happens, and it looks cool, but it's so. I think the word is artless. Like it's just sheen. It's just all sheen. It looks semi-realistic, but there's like no soul to it. And I don't know. AI is gonna look good, but it's sort of like we still can't perfectly recreate fire in CG. CG fire still a big thing to solve, and maybe AI can like recreate some of that eventually. But there are still things we cannot do very well, and I don't know if we'll accept it even when it is in front of us. Yeah.
What I'm more willing to say is going to happen in sometime in the next 5 years
Hmm.
is that there's going to be a fast channel, a free ad supported
Sure.
streaming TV channel that is AI garbage, and that people will talk about it because they're like, "Oh wow, look at this like AI reality show or something. Like this is really crazy." And that will make the tech people think like, "Oh, everyone actually loves this thing,"
Hmm.
when the folks who are talking about it are actually just making fun of it.
Sure. That could be it too. I think Roku had talked about using AI to produce some like fast channel content. Somebody did. Maybe it was
Yeah,
TCL,
no, this is
Roku
grounded
TCL or something.
in like some
Hmm.
information that I saw. There was something about like kind of a romance story involving Paris. This was a while ago before the Paris Olympics.
Hmm.
And it was completely AI generated, AI video, like AI script and all of that. Um,
Hmm.
if people talk about it, it's going to be making fun of it. It's not going to be because they actually like it.
Showrunner was that company that was trying to do the AI thing that would basically recreate you. And they did the AI South Park stuff too. That was in the news briefly. That is essentially what they're trying to do. Like that whole the thing that they're calling the simulation is essentially The Sims run on an AI server somewhere, and like you will pop in to some of the characters you created and kind of see how they're doing. You'll get summaries. But yeah, just sitcoms generated entirely by fake people.
Yeah.
But their lives are progressing is the thing. You're not just like tuning in.
Okay.
You're
Oh,
getting
yeah.
cut downs of their AI lives. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and
That's a
I
thing.
mean,
That's
then
interesting.
it becomes like a huge ethical question
Oh,
too, because
absolutely.
like, are you just going to like press a couple of keys and make this AI person's life horrible?
Absolutely. We all tortured Sims. Come on.
Yeah, exactly,
Let's know
exactly.
that. Build the pool and don't give them a ladder to get out. Yeah.
Keep a artist locked in the basement with the bare necessities so they can pump out paintings to make the actual Sims family rich.
I
I'm
did.
really surprised that there
Yeah.
hasn't been a movie that has talked about that, because like
hmm
we got kind of close with Parasite,
hmm
and we're getting to the point where the kids who grew up on The Sims are getting old enough and experienced enough to actually direct their own movies.
Most likely. It's more like Minecraft at this point too. Like the people who grew up with a lot of stuff. Anyway, we are going late. It's
Yeah.
really good to chat with you all. It's good to just hang out with the chat. We hope to do more live streams. Thank you all for hanging late. Mark Dell, George Morgan, Dipper9, everybody. Turbine. Hello. Thank you all for joining us. Ben, any final words for everybody? I know you have credits you want to do too.
Yeah, final words to DPro9 is that AI music may be the only thing that is actually useful in the near term. You saw that with BBL Drizzy, the
Yeah,
Metro Boomin Distrumental. And there's going to be a lot of people spending a lot of money thinking that they can replace artists when actually they're just making another plugin for human artists to use.
It's a good way to put
So
it.
good luck with that.
Good luck.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks to chat. You keep us smart. You remember stuff we forgot, like the fact that the ET game was a Atari game, not an NES game. You remember the fact that we're going to make a correction on our correction because the correction might not have been correct enough. So thank you for doing that. The video comes to you by Devindra on OBS. Camera switching was basically non-existent today, but I am still the audio producer.
We try.
We'll see you next week.
Later, folks. Bye.